December 31st, 2016, Baghdad. A white pickup truck moves through traffic like it belongs there. No sirens, no convoy, no warning. Inside the chassis is a massive hidden bomb, meant for New Year's Eve crowds, the kind of attack that turns a market into a crater. And behind the wheel is not a jihadist, not a fanatic, not a true believer. He's a government spy who has spent about 16 months living inside ISIS without being exposed. His name is Captain Harith al-Sudani, and his job is one of the worst jobs on earth, because to save Baghdad, he has to help ISIS try to destroy it. This is the story of the Iraqi spy who drove ISIS car bombs for a living. By the mid-2000s, Baghdad wasn't just fighting ISIS on front lines. It was fighting them in the streets, the markets, the queues outside cinemas. A city living under the quiet fear of the next car bomb. ISIS understood something simple. You don't need to conquer a capital to break it. You just need to make daily life feel unsafe. So while the world watched the big battles, Mosul, Fallujah, Ramadi, Baghdad faced an uglier kind of war. A war of hidden vehicles, last-minute calls, and a single wrong turn that could kill hundreds. To stop that, Iraq needed something more than soldiers. It needed moles. Inside Iraq's intelligence ecosystem, one unit gained a reputation for being unusually effective, the Falcons Intelligence Cell, known locally as Sukor. They worked closely with other security forces and the coalition, but their real strength wasn't raids, it was information. Their operatives were credited with preventing large numbers of attacks in Baghdad over the years, helping push the city toward its safest stretch in over a decade. And the most extraordinary story tied to them was a man who didn't hunt ISIS from outside it. He walked into the beast and lived there. Harith grew up in Sadr City, a dense, hard-edged part of eastern Baghdad, a place where loyalty, survival, and reputation can decide your future. He wasn't born into glamour or power. He grew up inside a system where young men either disappear into routine or find a way to matter. According to reporting later tied to his case, Harith became a captain linked to Iraqi intelligence and was eventually drawn into the Falcons orbit, not as a desk officer, but as a man who could be turned into something far more dangerous. Because the Falcons weren't looking for a superhero, they were looking for someone who could look believable to ISIS, someone who could pass as a real recruit, someone who could live a double life without cracking. To infiltrate ISIS, you can't act like an actor. You have to act like a person with nothing left to lose. Harith's cover had to feel real to men trained to sniff out weakness, fear, and lies. A single wrong phrase, a single hesitation at the wrong checkpoint could end with a bullet to the head. But he wasn't sent in to sit quietly. He was sent in to move, to gain trust, to earn access, to become useful. And ISIS offered him the fastest way to prove himself. ISIS needed logistics, drivers, runners, men who could deliver death in a sealed vehicle without asking too many questions. Some of the most devastating attacks in the region were built on this machinery, so Harith became part of it. A man who, on the outside, looked like a militant, helping push vehicles toward mass casualties. But inside, the mission was inverted. If the Falcons could track him, they could intercept attacks without revealing his cover. Reports tied to his story suggest his intelligence handlers relied on timing, coordination, and rapid intervention to neutralize attacks while keeping his identity intact. This wasn't a spy movie with one perfect moment. This was a grinding routine of terror. Drive, report, survive, over and over again. Iraqi officials later described Harith as one of the most successful moles they had ever placed inside ISIS. His work was reportedly tied to preventing dozens of planned attacks in the capital. Some reporting and summaries claim his intelligence helped disrupt roughly 30 vehicle bomb plots, and around 18 suicide bombers, though the exact numbers vary by account. But even if you ignore the math, the meaning is simple. There were mornings in Baghdad when the only reason a family didn't die was because one man was pretending to be the enemy. Then came the mission that felt bigger than everything before it. December 31st, 2016. ISIS wanted a New Year's Eve spectacle, coordinated shock, global headlines, and a body count that would echo into the next year. Harith was selected to drive a white pickup loaded with a hidden bomb meant for busy areas in Baghdad. He did what he always did. He drove. He stayed calm. He played his role. And somewhere in the background, his real team worked to intercept and neutralize what they could without blowing his identity. By the end of that night, reports indicated the attack was publicly framed as a blast that caused no casualties, a cover narrative meant to protect the source embedded inside ISIS. On paper, the mission was a success, but this was the moment the war shifted. Because ISIS wasn't just sending bombs anymore, they were checking for betrayal. A spy who survives too long becomes suspicious. Not because he's sloppy, but because he's lucky. And luck inside ISIS is usually a sign of something else. Later accounts suggest militants planted listening devices in the vehicle, enabling them to overhear moments that raised alarm. Harith sensed pressure. His handlers sensed it too. But in this world, you can't simply stop showing up. So when another mission came in early 2017, Harith went. This time, the location wasn't a busy city route. It was remote, a farmhouse outside strong ISIS territory, a place with fewer witnesses and fewer escape paths. For any infiltrator, that's a nightmare scenario, because you don't get rescued quickly in a place like that. You disappear. Reports say Harith entered the farmhouse, and communication went dark. The Falcons tried to plan a response, but moving into hostile areas takes time. When forces eventually raided the site, there was no clear sign of him. The silence was the answer. ISIS had likely figured it out. Months later, ISIS released propaganda showing executions of prisoners. Harith's team and family believed he was among them. Iraqi intelligence officials said he was identified and killed in August 2017. No body returned, no funeral, just the confirmation that a man who had lived in the shadows had died in the most brutal possible way because he chose to protect people who would never know his name. Harith left a widow and children, and after his death, his family faced an entirely different kind of fight: bureaucracy, paperwork, a government system that often requires proof no one can provide when a soldier or spy dies behind enemy lines. His father publicly described a long struggle to secure recognition, pension, and benefits, made harder because there was no body to present as evidence. Only after the story became widely known did officials reportedly step in to help push the process forward. It's one of the cruelest ironies of intelligence work. A man can save a city and still leave his family fighting to prove he existed. On the surface, this is an infiltration story, a brave spy, a successful intelligence cell, a city that survived. But underneath, it's something darker and more human. Because Harith didn't just infiltrate ISIS, he became the version of himself that ISIS needed him to be. He listened to plans that would nauseate most people. He sat with men who dreamed of slaughter. He drove vehicles that carried death while forcing his face not to flinch. That kind of double life doesn't end cleanly. It ends with trauma or martyrdom or both. Today, the world remembers ISIS through maps and battle timelines. But cities like Baghdad remember it through the absence of explosions that were supposed to happen, through the markets still standing, the families who never knew they almost died, the children who never learned their father was saved by a man pretending to be the enemy. Harith's story is both a victory and a warning because it tells you something terrifying. Even the most effective spy unit in a city still needs human lives to hold the line. And sometimes the line is held by one man in one vehicle driving toward the darkest place on Earth with a secret that can't be spoken out loud. People imagine undercover work as one brilliant performance. In reality, it's 1,000 tiny performances. Every morning, Harith had to wake up and remember which version of himself was allowed to exist that day. The loyal recruit, the eager logistics man, the driver who doesn't ask questions. He couldn't be too cautious, that looks suspicious. He couldn't be too confident, that looks trained. He had to land in the exact middle zone ISIS trusted most, the useful nobody. Running a deep cover source inside a terror organization is a high-stakes math problem. If you move too early, you burn in. If you wait too long, people die. Every interception had to be calibrated to look like luck or routine policing, not a direct line to an insider. That meant letting some missions breathe long enough to appear possible, then cutting them off at the last safe second. To ISIS, a plot failed. To Harith, each failure was another day of breathing without being noticed. We love to imagine wars are won by the loudest victories, but some victories are silent. They exist in markets that reopened the next morning, in families who never learned how close they came to becoming headlines. Harith al-Sudani didn't get a parade. He didn't get a public hero's funeral. He didn't even get certainty for his family until the world heard his name. What he got was something colder, a place in the ledger of people who paid the price of invisibility so a capital city could keep breathing. And when you look back at the era of ISIS and ask how Baghdad survived the worst of it, sometimes the answer isn't general. It's a man in a pickup truck driving straight into hell with 2 lives in his chest and only one way out.